Now, after months of growing dissent over his support for Israel, Biden came face to face with protesters in South Carolina as he gave an address to win back voters ahead of this year's election. But only a few minutes into his speech, Biden was confronted by demonstrators at the church where a white supremacist had killed 9 black worshippers back in 2015.
That's all right. That's all right. That's all right.
Call for a ceasefire in Palestine.
Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now!
That's all right.
That's all right.
That's all right. That's all right. That's all right. That's all right.
Unfazed by chants of ceasefire now that erupted from the crowd, Biden stayed calm during the commotion before telling the audience that he had been quietly working with the Israeli government, as I mentioned, to get them to reduce their presence and get out of Gaza.
Thank you. Look, folks, I understand their passion, and I've been quietly working with the Israeli government to get them to reduce and significantly get out of Gaza. I'm using all that I can to do that.
The confrontation underscores the challenge Biden faces after initially giving his full support to Israel in the wake of Hamas's attacks on the 7th of October. Since then, the death toll of innocent children and civilians continues to rise. Biden has come under intense pressure to change his stance. His remarks come as U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken landed in Israel. Blinken is visiting West Asia for a week of shuttle diplomacy amid heightened fears that the war between Israel and Hamas militants in Gaza will spark a broader regional conflict. Now, for more details on the story, our correspondent Susan Tehrani has sent us this report. Listen to this.
Protesters calling for a ceasefire in Gaza briefly interrupted U.S. President Joe Biden's speech in Charleston, South Carolina. About half a dozen protesters were quickly ushered out of the event as the rest of the crowd chanted 4 more years, a clear sign of the divide among the Democratic Party about America's response to Israel's war against Hamas. Biden said in response that he understood the protesters' passion and that he's been quietly working with the Israeli government to get them out of the Gaza Strip. The Israel-Hamas war has divided Democrat voters in recent months, notably more progressive and younger voters who have been criticizing President Biden's support for Israel. The incident happened during President Biden's second campaign speech at a church in Charleston, South Carolina. His focus during that speech was to warn the American public and the crowd that former President Donald Trump, his likely Republican contender for the 2024 presidential election, is a threat to democracy. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.